Good, happy Friday evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to my special report right here on the Riley King Network. Impeachment trial continues. We're going to begin with a timeline of the events that's been taking place during the impeachment trial today, and then after we will go to the ABC News live stream and listen in on the impeachment trial. Let's begin with the timeline of events. At 1:40 p.m., House Manager Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of Congressman from New York, claimed in his remarks that the president worked hard to hide his misconduct. Jeffries said that by July 2019, White House officials were aware of serious allegations of misconduct by President Trump regarding the withhold of military aid to Ukraine, but instead of halting the president's corrupt shame, they worked overtime to conceal it from the American people, he said. As additional evidence mounted, the Republicans worked hard to keep the American people from learning about the president's misconduct. Secretary of State Pompeo and Defense and John Bolton tried to convince President Trump to lift the hold on the security assistance. They failed. The $391 million in security aid was only released because President Trump was caught red-handed, Jeffries said. At 2:57 p.m., during his remarks Friday afternoon, House Manager Adam Schiff put focus on the House claims that delaying aid to Ukraine embattled Russia. He called Russia's invasion of Ukraine a threat to the peace and security of Europe. Schiff said that if Congress had not voted overwhelmingly on a bipartisan base for military assistance to Ukraine, it would have invited further Russia advisors in the country. At 3:31 p.m., the senators just took a 15-minute break. At 4:23 p.m., House Manager Val Demings opened her afternoon remarks by discussing allegations that Trump's direction to current and former White House officials was not comply with subpoena to testify or turn over documents of impeachment investigators. The Democrat Congresswoman also named the government agencies she says have not complied at Trump's direction. At 5:56 p.m., House Manager Jerry Nadler closed out his remarks with some of the most fiery language that's been heard so far directed at President Trump, calling him a dictator. The New York Democrat said Trump is the first and only president to ever declare himself unaccountable and to ignore subpoena backed by the Constitution impeachment power. Nadler said that if Trump is not removed from office, he is permitted to defy the Congress entirely, categorically, to say the subpoena from Congress in the impeachment inquiry are nonsense. Then he will have lost the House, will have lost the Senate, certainly have lost all power to hold any president accountable. Nadler said Trump wants to be powerful. He does not have respect for the Congress. He does not have the resource, the representative of the people. Only his will go. He is a dictator, Nadler continued. This must not stand, and that is why another reason he must be removed from office. 6:38 p.m., Rep. Hackey Jeffries said Friday evening that the sequence of events in the Trump impeachment largely track those in the Nixon proceedings. He summarized the Nixon inquiry and argued that the concern of events in the Trump inquiry is entirely consistent with Richard Nixon proceedings. Jeffries also addressing Trump's criticism of the process of the impeachment, saying the president is a suspect who may have committed a high crime or misdemeanor. Trump cannot tell the detectives investigating the possible constitutional crime what they should do in the context of their investigation, Jeffries said. At 6:46 p.m., the Senate trial is on a 30-minute dinner break, and they have resumed a couple minutes ago. So now let's listen into the impeachment trial from the ABC News live stream.
His behalf in the next election. Now, I must emphasize that President Trump's obstruction persists to this day. The second article of impeachment charges a high crime in progress. As a result, the president's wrongdoing did not just harm the House as we have performed our own constitutional duty, it is also harming the Senate, which is being deprived of information you need before the votes you will soon take. And of course, the true victim is the American people, who deserve the full truth. As we've discussed, the president's claims that all the evidence he is hiding and covering up would actually prove his innocence. To borrow a phrase from the late Justice Scalia, that claim, quote, taxes the credulity of the credulous. President Trump has used all the authority of his office to block the full truth from coming to light. He has defied subpoenas and ordered others to do so. He has publicly intimidated and threatened witnesses. He has attacked the House for daring to investigate him. And he has lobbed an endless volley of personal attacks on witnesses and meritless complaints about procedure to sow confusion and distract the American people. The president's abuses are unfolding before our eyes, and they must be stopped. Now, before I conclude, I think you all deserve an explanation from me as to why I am standing here. There's been a lot of conversation the last few years about what makes America great. And I have some ideas about that. I happen to think that what makes America great is that generation after generation, there have been Americans that have been willing to stand up and put aside their self-interest to make great sacrifices for the public good, for our country. I know because I have seen people do that. Like some of the people in this chamber, I have seen people give everything for this country so we can sit here today. Now, this isn't politically expedient. It certainly isn't for me. It's hard. It requires sacrifice. It's uncomfortable. But that is the very definition of public service. That we are here to give of ourselves for the country, for others, at sacrifice to ourselves. Those who have given so much for this country deserve nothing less from us now than to try to honor those sacrifices. I have tried to do that the last few days. My time is done, and it is now your turn.
Chief Justice, Senators, learned counsel for the President, you'll be pleased to know this is the last presentation of the evening. And as I started last night, I made reference to some good advice I got from a encouraging voice that said, keep it up but not too long. Tonight I got some equally good advice. To be immortal, you don't need to be eternal. And I will do my best not to be eternal. First point I'd like to make is I'm tired. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. And I can only imagine how you feel. But I'm also very deeply grateful for just how you have attended to these presentations and discussions over the last few days. Deeply grateful. I can tell how much consideration you've given to our point of view and the President's point of view, and that's all we can ask. At the end of the day, all we can ask is that you hear us out and make the best judgment that you can, consistent with your conscience and our Constitution. Now, I wanted to start out tonight with where we began, when we first appeared before you about a week ago, and that is with the resolution itself, with what the President is charged with in the articles and how that holds up now that you have heard the evidence from the House. Donald Trump was impeached in Article 1 for abuse of power. And that article provides that in his conduct of the office of President of the United States and in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and to the best of his ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and is in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has abused the powers of his presidency in that, using the powers of his high office, President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election. President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 election. That has been proved. He did so through a scheme or course of conduct that included soliciting the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations that would benefit his reelection, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence the 2020 U.S. presidential election to his advantage. That has been proved. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official U.S. government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of the investigations. That has been proved. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct for corrupt purposes in pursuit of personal political benefit. That has been proved. In doing so, President Trump used the power of the presidency in a manner that compromised the national security of the United States and undermined the integrity of the United States democratic process. That has been proved. He thus ignored and injured the interests of the nation. That has been proved. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct through the following means. President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the United States government, corruptly solicited the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations into a political opponent, former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr. That has been proved. A discredited theory promoted by Russia alleging that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the 2016 United States presidential election. That has been proved. With the same corrupt motives, President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the U.S. government, conditioned two official acts on the public announcements that he had requested: the release of $391 million of U.S. taxpayer funds that Congress had appropriated on a bipartisan basis for the purpose of providing vital military and security assistance to Ukraine to oppose Russian aggression, and which President Trump had ordered suspended. That has been proved. And B, a head of state meeting at the White House, which the President of Ukraine sought to demonstrate continued United States support for the government of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. That has been proved. Faced with public revelation of his actions, President Trump ultimately released the military and security assistance to the government of Ukraine, but has persisted in openly and corruptly urging and soliciting Ukraine to undertake investigations for his personal political benefit. That has been proved. These actions were consistent with President Trump's previous invitations of foreign interference in U.S. elections. That has been proved. In all of this, President Trump abused the powers of the presidency by ignoring and injuring national security and other vital national interests to obtain an improper personal political benefit. That has been proved. He also betrayed the nation by abusing his high office to enlist a foreign power in corrupting democratic elections. That has been proved. Wherefore, President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law. That has been proved. President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. That will be for you to decide. But the facts have been proved. Those facts are not contested. We have met our burden. Article 2, obstruction of Congress. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment, and the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In his conduct of the office of the President, in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States, and to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has directed the unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives pursuant to its sole power of impeachment. That has been proved. President Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in a manner offensive to and subversive of the Constitution, in that the House of Representatives has engaged in an impeachment inquiry focused on President Trump's corrupt solicitation of the government of Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. That has been proved. As part of this impeachment inquiry, the committees undertaking the investigation served subpoenas, seeking documents and testimony deemed vital to the inquiry from various executive branch agencies and offices and current and former officials. That has been proved. In response, without lawful cause or excuse, President Trump directed executive branch agencies, offices, and officials not to comply with those subpoenas. That has been proved. President Trump thus interposed the powers of the presidency against the lawful subpoenas of the House of Representatives and assumed to himself functions and judgments necessary to exercise the sole power of impeachment vested in the Constitution in the House of Representatives. That has been proved. President Trump abused the powers of his high office through the following means. Number one, directing the White House to defy a lawful subpoena by withholding the production of documents sought therein by the committees. That has been proved. directing other executive branch agencies and offices to defy lawful subpoenas and withhold the production of documents and records from the committees, in response to which the Department of State, the Office of Management Budget, Department of Energy, and Department of Defense refused to produce a single record or document. That has been proved. Directing current and former executive branch officials not to cooperate with the committees, in response to which 9 administration officials defied subpoenas for testimony, namely John Michael Mulvaney, Robert B. Blair, John A. Eisenberg, Michael Ellis, Preston Wells Griffith, Russell T. Vaught, Michael Duffy, Brian McCormick, and T. Ulrich Brechtel. That has been proved. These actions were consistent with President Trump's previous efforts to undermine United States government investigations into foreign interference in U.S. elections. That has been proved. Through these actions, President Trump sought to arrogate to himself the right to determine the propriety, scope, and nature of an impeachment inquiry into his own conduct, as well as the unilateral prerogative to deny any and all information to the House of Representatives in the exercise of its sole power of impeachment. That has been proved. In the history of the Republic, no precedent has ever ordered the complete defiance of an impeachment inquiry, or sought to obstruct and impede so comprehensively the ability of the House of Representatives to investigate high crimes and misdemeanors. That has been proved. The abuse of office served to cover up the president's own repeated misconduct and to seize and control the power of impeachment, and thus to nullify a vital safeguard vested solely in the House of Representatives. That has been proved. In all of this, President Trump has acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice, and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. That has been proved. Whereas, or wherefore, President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-government and the rule of law. That has been proved. President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. That will be for you to determine. Let me say something about this second article. The facts of the president's defiance of Congress are very simple, because they were so uniform, because they were so categorical, because they are so uncontested. But do not mistake for a moment the fact that it was simple and quick to present that course of conduct compared with a sophisticated campaign to coerce Ukraine into thinking that that second article is any less significant than the first. Do not believe that for a moment. If there is no Article 2, let me tell you something. There will never be an Article 1. If there's no Article 2, there will never, of any kind or shape or form, be an Article 1. And why is that? Because if you and we lack the power to investigate a president, there will never be an Article 1. Whether that Article 1 is abuse of power, or that Article 1 is treason, or that Article 1 is bribery, there will never be an Article 1 if the Congress can't investigate an impeachable offense. If the Congress cannot, because the president prevents it, investigate the president's own wrongdoing, there will never be an Article 1. Because there will be no more impeachment power. It will be gone. It will be gone. As I said before, our relationship with Ukraine will survive. God willing, our relationship with Ukraine will survive, and Ukraine will prosper, and we will get beyond this ugly chapter of our history. But if we are to decide here that a president of the United States can simply say, under Article 2, I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to treat a co-equal branch of government like it exists. I don't have to give it any more than the back of my hand. That will be an unending injury to this country. Ukraine will survive, and so will we, but that will be an unending injury to this country, because the balance of power that our founders set out will never be the same. Will never be the same. The president can simply say, I'm going to fight all subpoenas. And I'll tell you something else. Truism in the courts is just as true here in the Senate, where they say justice delayed is justice denied. You give this president or any other the unilateral power to delay as long as he or she likes, to litigate matters for years and years in the courts, and do not fool yourself into thinking it is anything less. In April, it will be a year since we subpoenaed Don McGahn, and there is no sign of an end to that case. And I'll tell you, when it gets to the Supreme Court, you might think that's the end, and that's just the end of the first chapter. Because Don McGahn is in court saying, I'm absolutely immune from testimony. Now, that's been rejected by every court that's looked at it. But we'll see what the Court of Appeals says, and then we'll see if it goes to an en banc Court of Appeals, and then we'll see what the Supreme Court says. And when we prevail in the Supreme Court, you know what happens? That's not the end of the matter. It comes back to the trial court, and then, well, they can't claim absolute immunity anymore. They can't claim that we don't even have to bother showing up. So now we're going to turn to Plan B, executive privilege. We're going to say we can't and won't answer any of the questions that are really pertinent to your impeachment inquiry. And let's start out in district court, and then go to the Court of Appeals, and then go en banc, and then go to the Supreme Court. You can game the system for years. Justice delayed is justice denied, and so is true about presidential accountability. So, when you suggest, or I suggest, or anyone suggests, or the White House suggests...
Okay, and that's gonna do it for our special edition in this special report of the impeachment trial. If you want to continue watching that impeachment trial, you can just head over to the Riley King Network Facebook page, and you can click on this link that we shared for you, so you can continue watching it if you want to. And here is that link right here if you want to continue watching it. And you can also go to the ABC News Live Facebook page and get it on there as well. Thank you for watching this special report right here on the Riley King Network. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another special report of continuing coverage of this impeachment trial. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.